Check 1, 2, check 3, 4.
notice at your tables there are pens and pads of paper. We invite you to write down questions you would like to ask of our legislators so we can collect those right before the speaking portion. And you will have a hand in asking questions of our guests today. So please do that. If you have a question you'd like to ask, raise your hand and we'll pick it up.
Could you test that for me?
Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, I just have the video company. Check 1, 2. Scribble there, 2, 3, 4, yeah. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, check 1. Check 1. Hello, check 1. Check. coming.
Check 1, 2. Thank you very much for coming to the legislative breakfast this morning. Check 1, 2. Welcome to the 2016 legislative breakfast. Check 1, 2.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for attending the 6th Annual Pembroke Chamber of Commerce Legislative Breakfast. We're thrilled to have you here, as well as our local legislators, and we hope you leave here today having learned something. Before we get started, on your table, there are pads of paper and pens, and we invite you to write down a question that you'd like for the legislators. And if you have one, just raise your hand and Gina will come around and pick them up and get them to me. Of course, an event like this does not just happen. And I can't thank enough the chair of our marketing committee, Peter Brown, and our administrative assistant, Gina Anderson, for all they did to make it happen. And of course, it doesn't happen for free, and I want to thank our sponsors who were so generous to help us put this event on this morning. Long Pond Physical Therapy, Tiny & Sons, JLC Tech, Boston Connect Real Estate, Good Deeds, True Life Chiropractic, A Fork in the Road, Lori Cook. So thank you to all of our sponsors as well. And of course, the audio, which he is the best. PJ the DJ providing the audio today. There's a couple of people in attendance this morning that I want to recognize. The Pembroke Police Chief Rick Wall. Rick, where are you? And also Pembroke Fire Chief Mike Hill. And last but certainly not least, our Plymouth County Sheriff Joe McDonald. Joe is here. Also want to thank the Plymouth Chamber's Bob Nolet and Amy Naples for joining us today. For those of you that aren't aware, the Pembroke Chamber and the Plymouth Chamber have a memorandum of understanding where our members can attend the Plymouth Chamber events at their member cost, and their members can attend ours, and it's a great opportunity for both chambers. I look at it as an outstanding opportunity and value added for our members, because the Pembroke Chamber can only do so much, and the Plymouth Chamber has some wonderful programs that you can avail yourself to. So Bob, Amy, thank you very much. All right, I'd like to introduce our speakers today, and I'm going to ask them to come up one at a time. Our state senator from the Plymouth and Barnstable District, Vinny deMacedo. Wherever you want. I'm putting all the prettiest guys on my right, yeah. I noticed there's only a couple of chairs over there, so not sure what that means. Our own state representative from the 6th Plymouth District, Josh Cutler. Oh, great. Thank you, Josh. Are you asking it? No. Okay. Also from the 1st Plymouth District, State Rep Matt Muratore. And last but not least, our neighbor from the 4th Plymouth District, Jim Cantwell. I never should have said anything about the prettiest guys, because attaboy, Vinny. Playing the role of the politician, I love it. Okay, we're going to today try to discuss problems facing you all as business owners, and also problems facing our communities which can't help but trickle down to us as business owners. And I'm going to start first with the opiate problem that's prevailing throughout all of our high schools. And this is something that isn't just impacting the high schools. It impacts the community, and anything that impacts the community is going to impact our businesses. So I'd like to start with Vinny and ask, what is the legislature doing to try to get ahead of this thing and knock it down?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having us. We appreciate appreciate it. It's a great opportunity to reach out to Pembroke to talk to you about what's happening on Beacon Hill. And I know this entire legislative delegation, this has been probably one of the biggest things we've dealt with. I'll say going back probably was a little over a year and a half ago, the governor was sworn in, and at his inaugural speech, he said that he spoke about the opiate problem. And he looked at everybody straight in the eye and he says, I am going to do everything I can within my power to hit this issue head on. And he got a standing ovation, and everybody was excited, because we all know that this is one of the biggest issues that we face. And he put together a task force, and they went out and they came up with 59 recommendations approximately. One of our own Plymouth County Sheriff right here was on that task force, and they went around the entire state to try to find out what is it that we can do to try to address this. We've addressed a lot of it through legislation, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about this last bill that I had the privilege of being on the conference committee on, which was the opiate bill, which was a prevention and education bill. We've addressed the issue of beds. And let me just take an opportunity to tell you a little bit about beds, because I was at a hearing the other day. The Secretary of Public Safety was there, and he was talking about the problem that they've had is, this whole problem. I know many of you heard about Framingham Correctional Facility, and women that were Section 35 were ending up going to prison, basically, because we had no place to put them. And so they were going there, and we've had a shortage of beds. We had a shortage of beds for men as well, and the only other opportunity is if you didn't put them there, they were back out on the street. And you know what happens if someone's overdosed and they're back out on the street. Guess what ends up happening? We Narcan them, they go back, they probably go back without the help. And the Secretary of Public Safety, there's 14 sheriffs there, he said, and I got a phone call from Sheriff Joe McDonald, who said to me, what can we do to help? He opened up a section in his area, and he said, and he saves people's lives. And it was just, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate what Joe's done. That's right here in Plymouth County, and we stood out because the interesting thing is the sheriff's departments have become, treatment facilities in many ways. They've been helping people. They've been doing things that we don't even think about. You think you're just locking people up. You're actually giving people treatment, giving them hope, turning them around, because most people, once this addiction owns them, it owns them, and there's nothing you can do. Doesn't make sense. And so the reality is that having an open-minded sheriff who's looking and trying to give these people hope, because they're going to get back out on the street, and trying to turn their lives around makes a huge difference. So we've done a lot in that regard. So to that extent, I really wanted to congratulate the sheriff. Just a quick thing on the opiate bill specifically that we just recently did. Again, prevention and education. Partial fill. Partial fill is you get a prescription. Many years ago, my daughters, 5 years ago, both daughters, 15 and 17, once got their wisdom teeth pulled. They left the play, they left it, they did it the same day. They both got two full prescriptions for 10 days of oxycodone, 15 and 17 years old. That's crazy. And so what the legislature did is we did a partial fill. So somebody like myself who could say, you know what, I only want it for 3 days, or I want it for 2 days, or whatever. You can make that decision when you go in there, as opposed, because the doctors give it and they're running. And now now you have the opportunity to do a partial fill, so that you don't have all these prescriptions sitting in your counters. A lot of people didn't think about it. And guess what? People were breaking into the counters. 24-hour hold, going to the situation I talked about, Joe. People overdose. You can hold them for 24 hours, evaluate them, and hopefully get them some kind of treatment. 7-day prescriptions now. You go for the first time, you go for a prescription. I talked about the 10-day. They can only give you, for the first time, opiate painkillers, they can only give you 7 days as a max. Drug stewardship program, requiring the prescription companies to have to come up with some kind of a plan, which I think is really interesting. That is challenging them, because frankly, they've pushed too much, in my opinion. The prescription companies have pushed their products too much, and we use it far more than we ever should. And lastly, another important point is SBIRT, which is a program that actually is in the school systems, and we try to find kids that might be more apt or more in a bigger situation, how would I put this politely? find themselves in a situation where they've probably started to show signs of possibility of going down the wrong path, and you're able to pick them out. It's a very small group, but you can ask certain questions that have been professionally developed that will start to have us be able to hone in on those individuals to try to get them direction and help. And so that's part of this piece of legislation. It's the first in the nation. The governor came back. He was at a national conference of governors. We will be the first state in the nation that has tackled this issue as ambitiously as we have in this piece of legislation. And it just got signed. We all worked on that thing, and I'm just very, very proud of that. So to that issue, I'm really excited about what we're doing. Still got a real long way to go. I know you all know this. I'm looking at Chief Wall, and you know how big a problem this is. But we're dealing with it, and we're doing a lot of different things. So I'm really excited about that. So thank you very much for that.
And I should mention to our speakers that you have microphones to save you the trip up to the podium. No, I know you like the spotlight, so I didn't mind sharing.
And my idea for it is to have a unused and expired prescription drug take-back day in the town of Pembroke, just to get these prescription drugs off the streets or out of the medicine cabinets, because most likely that's where people keep them, and that's where people start first taking them. And it's a good idea to get to the root of the problem. And I've been working with Chief Wall on finding a day, probably in the fall, to get my project going and have a collection day in which I'm just going to be advertising, because obviously I can't be doing any collecting. That's up to the police department. And I was just looking for ideas and suggestions that anyone would like to do.
So I'm Mike Cochran from the Pembroke Titans Against Drugs. Whatever you need for to make posters, any of that advertising type stuff, please come to us. We'd be happy to help you with that. Also, we can get you up on our website, social media, all that stuff. They'll get, I think, the right following for that.
Definitely, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. The Pembroke Chamber, when we're running a program out, the Pembroke Chamber will do everything we can to help support you and roll that out with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dave?
Mr. Cantwell, yes?
Oh, sorry. I was going to add to some community. So, hi, my name is Ginny Wendell. I'm a member of the Pembroke School Committee. And I think it would be a great connection to use our broadcast network.
Definitely.
And your whole community, where we do this together. I think it's really important that you bring your message over time, several times. And I believe I would speak for our new superintendent and the school committee that we welcome you to our meetings to help officially mark you as the leader in our community. And I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you.
So Dave, just to add a few points. First, Patrick, you are far brighter than I am, because we're doing the same exact thing, working with Sheriff Joe McDonald. We want to do a drug take-back program. And I put a thing in the paper saying, come to my office hours, everyone just bring any of these unused drugs. We want to get them out of your home. And a big public display about it. Then Chief, as you could imagine, we got a call from Chief Tavares saying, Jim, you can't just collect unused drugs. First of all, you're now a target, because you're saying you're going to have all these drugs. And secondly, do you think you can carry them around? So we very quickly did it with Sheriff Joe McDonald, remember Joe? And we had Chief Tavares come. By the way, on this issue, first of all, Chief Wall was one of the first people in public law enforcement who said we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. that we're going to need to emphasize issues for treatment. And that was a pretty brave thing to do years ago, because at the time when you were advocating for that with Sheriff McDonald and others, we knew we were having a crisis, but to get our arms around it and to have public safety leaders who would be saying that was pretty extraordinary, because most of the treatment is being done now, as being touched upon down at the jail, it seems. A few things to add to that. First of all, the prescription drug monitoring program was a prior piece of legislation, but that we're making stronger, just so people know when someone goes to a drug, goes to a doctor, that is. If I go to Dr. deMacedo and I say, hey, listen, I'm having some back pain, I need to have this opiate, if he writes me a prescription and then a week later I'm going to Dr. Cutler and looking for the same thing, before people were able to do that, they were able to game the system. We now have really tightened that up so that doctors are recording those. That's a way to cut down on people from having the abuse. One of the others, thing that Vinny and I co-sponsored, and our delegation, you can see on this issue, and frankly every issue, how strong bipartisan support we have, because there's nothing about a partisanship issue here. We have one program that Vinny and I have both been fighting, and then both Josh and Matt have been leading because they're host of it. It's called Drug Story Theater, where we have young people, Pembroke people of your age, who act out. They basically are young people who have become addicted, and they act, tell their friends how they got into addiction, show how terrible it is for their lives, what it's done to them. It's the most powerful program to be able to show young people the idea of why you don't want to use in the first place. And that is the emphasis that we want to be making is on prevention in the first place. Once someone's in the throes of addiction, we're seeing this relapse on an average of 7 times. So we will be coming back talking to you from a business center of how we can get better ideas, better support for doing prevention techniques in the first place. Final thing I want to lead with is an idea that Joe McDonald was spearheading with others of recovery coaches. We just announced yesterday at our hospital, South Shore Hospital, now funding that Matt, I think you were leading it, and Josh, our delegation, but we have $200,000. So now if someone does go to a hospital and they've had an overdose, it used to be, our hospitals are phenomenal. Someone shows up there, acute symptoms, they get them healthy, they get them right, they fix them, take care of them, but then it's in them home. And someone could overdose 72 hours later, which happens quite often. Now we have a program of recovery coaches, so if I go in and I've had an overdose, there's going to be someone right there saying, listen, I've been in the same place as you, I'm in recovery too, I know what it's like, this is how I got to be healthy, this is how I got to be saved. There's a program that we'll give to PAC TV called Interface that we fund that lines people up. If someone says, I need help, but my insurance, I don't know where to go to, you will immediately now, within the 24-hour hold, be able to get people on with treatment. So I want to thank the Chamber just for the opening, just to have us, and this shows you the value, Patrick, just to get a lot of really smart people together. They're already giving you great ideas how to make your program successful. So thank you.
Josh, Matt, are you going to do something there to fit in?
Sure. Is this one working? Yeah. Thank you all again for being here. I feel like I'm at home here as a Pembroke Chamber member. I always look forward to this, and thank all my colleagues for coming, and especially President Dave Schaefer, all his work that goes into this. As you can see, we joke around, and obviously this is a very serious issue, but we all work together quite well, and this is something we've all been working on together. Senator deMacedo, Representative Kevin touched on some of the major things. I just wanted to fill in mention a couple of things that we've been working on as well. One is a bill that was actually passed last year that's now in effect that removes insurance company barriers for getting treatment. So in the past, if you wanted to get detox treatment, in many cases you had to get pre-authorization from your insurance company. So you can imagine if you are someone who's in that position where you made the decision to try to get help, okay, which is getting to that point is not an easy place to be to begin with. But once you've made that very difficult decision, the last thing that will happen is have doors close in your face because your insurance company is making you fill out more paperwork or says you can't qualify. So we took a step in Massachusetts, again, much like the opioid bill we just passed, the governor signed, that I think is a landmark kind of change to say to insurance companies, if your doctor says you need to get detox treatment, you have to get at least 14 days of detox treatment before your insurance company can say no. Now, so that's not enough time, and many folks need much more time, but it's a start and it gets you in the door into that treatment that you need when you make that decision. So that was a major bill we passed last session, and I'm very proud of. Again, it was a bipartisan bill. all of us supported it very strongly to remove those barriers for insurance companies so that folks can get the treatment on their doctor's recommendation. Jim mentioned Project Interface, something that he has led and all of us have supported as well. I'm pleased to let you know that is available here in Pembroke. Pembroke is one of the communities on the South Shore that is part of that pilot program. So if there are folks in Pembroke who want to get help, because we all know that mental health, unfortunately, is a big part of this substance abuse issue. And if folks need help, are not sure where to call to get in touch with a qualified professional, Project Interface fills in that gap and can match you with someone who's qualified. So this was a pilot program that Jim helped launch with Matt and Vinny, and it wasn't all over. It was just really on our communities. This was something we wanted to get done. So that was something that we want to make sure you all are aware of. And one more thing, I want to take everything from Matt.
Potholes, can we do something?
How about those sewer lines? Just one last thing. We have a new session of the Plymouth District Court called Drug Court. And this is a way, we've talked about the three legs of the stool here. You have treatment, prevention, and rehabilitation. Those are sort of the three legs of the stool to address this crisis. We've talked about the treatment and the prevention. The rehabilitation, just locking everybody up and putting people in jail is not going to solve this problem. There are hardcore traffickers, and we need to deal with them in a severe way. And in fact, we added some tougher laws this session about fentanyl trafficking, because we saw some significant increase in fentanyl use, which is a very dangerous carcinogen. But in general, we need to be smarter about crime, not always tougher about crime. And so we made an important step to add a session of the district court called the Drug Court. The first one in Plymouth County, it was Judge Vinny from our district who helped to create it. And it's a special session of the district court that just handles drug crimes. And, it's a way to kind of try to pinpoint the folks who we can get help and who are appropriate for rehabilitation, and not just, putting them in jail and saying, deal with it. So that was the first step to sort of address this and acknowledge that, we need to be smart about the folks who we can try to get back out and get in treatment beds. It's a lot cheaper as a taxpayer to put someone in a treatment bed than as to house in the house of correction. So we have a new session of drug court. That whole model is working very well, and we're expanding it. And we supported in the budget last year 5 more drug courts around the Commonwealth, the Broadway as well in Brockton. And so that's a model that we're looking to expand even more to do these kind of specific sessions of the trial court to address substance abuse issues. So obviously a lot of different ways we're going, and I apologize to my good friend Matt, who's 400 that was big. So talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that around opiate. Can I get up there and talk like Vinny did? Well, thank you again for having us here today. As usual, as a freshman legislator, I always go last, and I have nothing more to add because they take everything. Never leave me anything to talk about. But I do want to say one thing. I have a healthcare background, and one thing that was really striking to me for the first time is that people are saying this is a disease. Addiction is a disease. It's not. There shouldn't be a stigma to that. It's just like having cancer or diabetes, and I've been saying that for years in healthcare. And once we all start thinking of it as a disease, then we can start treating it that way. And this bill actually does that. One thing in Plymouth that Chief Muratore has been doing, he started this program back in December, and it's going to be spreading out to, I think it started in Carver now, it's going to Middleborough, and then it's going to be going to the rest of Plymouth County over the next several months, is that when there is an overdose and Narcan is administered, within 24 hours, a plainclothes detective actually goes out to the house with somebody from a treatment program like High Point or Gosnell, et cetera, and they actually offer beds. And thanks to Sheriff McDonald, who has added beds in other parts of the Commonwealth where beds are now added, that people are able to go get help. And they're finding that it is helping, that a number of people are actually taking them up on that. They may not do it at the time when they're in the hospital, but 24 hours later, when they go into the house, they are taking up on it, and it's becoming successful. So you have something to look forward to in the rest of the county for that very soon.
Very good.
Well, a common theme that all of you have mentioned is how important our police and fire are in dealing with this opiate problem. And this goes back many years. Funding for our police and fire departments. And that also probably affects Jim Cantwell and the county sheriff's office as well. It's always a problem on the local level because towns have budgets, and I don't think that over budgeted for the police and fire. So I'm going to ask each of you, what is happening on the state level to provide funding for our local police and fire departments? You want to start, or should I do that first so that he can lead off?
I can take that. Yeah. I'll start with that, if you don't mind. You sure, Vinny? You need more coffee or anything before we start? You all set? I usually drive when we're getting breakfast or whatever. I know my role. Well, I'm a former selectman out of Plymouth, so I kind of see these things from the town perspective going up to the State House now. And one of the biggest thing is really what the governor has done is made a commitment to cities and towns and local aid. To provide more local aid for the cities and towns as a way to help with funding of additional officers in both the police and the fire. I know Plymouth has had that debate, and we have a town meeting next week about that, and I'm looking to add a few more. So I think the more that we can all help support getting more local aid back to the communities, I think will be a way to help fund police and fire. Thank you, Dave, for the question. Just to elaborate on what Matt said, there's two main forms of local aid back to our cities and towns: our Chapter 70 for our schools, and what's called unrestricted general government aid, or UGA for short. Many of you may have heard of it as lottery aid, which is what it used to be in its former incarnation. So those are the ways that we get money back to our towns to help folks like Ed and Arthur Brown and Bill Bolter do town budgets. And we're always, and this is something that's very bipartisan. We all want to get more money back to our cities and towns. And we had, in fact, just had a great effort that Senator DeMacedo and I and all of us in the South Shore delegation signed on to try to push for an increase in what's called a minimum per pupil increment for Chapter 70, which is a fancy way of saying getting more money for our suburban school districts that tend to get shortchanged, in my view, in the state funding formula. So we had 71 members of the House and Senate, Democrat and Republican, sign on to a letter that Vinny and I authored, asking for an increase in the per pupil minimum, which was cut in the current budget. So we're trying to get that raised back up and pushed even higher. So that's one way. That's not going to directly impact or help Chief Wall, but what it's going to do is going to put more money back into our schools, put less pressure on the folks at Town Hall, and free up some money. So we obviously, all of us, I think all of us are former local elected officials. I was a selectman and a planning board member, and we certainly get it. The other thing I wanted to mention when Matt was talking, and we were talking, one of the things, again, this was a county effort, but we just got $2.3 million in a supplemental budget for the Plymouth County District Attorney to renovate and expand his office in Brockton, the city of Brockton, which will benefit all of Plymouth County. That was something that Vinny and Jim were very much involved with. So that's something that helps as well. We had some money for the sheriffs in our supplemental budget that we passed yesterday, although not according to Sheriff McDonald. He was always a strong advocate for our sheriffs, and so we'll be working on that. But those are just a few ways we're trying to address that, Chief. Thank you.
Every year we go to the Police Chiefs Association and they talk to us about their priorities. And one of the priorities for many years has been the municipal training fund. And it would have been about $3.5 million around that. And we've been pushing it. This last year, I think it was $5-point-something million, and we've increased it. That really makes a big difference for police departments to have the opportunity to get, their officers trained in how to deal with, and specifically the opiate crisis. It is far different than I think we used to deal with it in the past. And on best practices on how to approach these situations and circumstances. I think we got the legislature to understand that if they're better trained, they can deal with these crises better and get them in there. So they're doing a lot in that regard. So we've been able to increase that municipal training fund, I think pretty significantly. It was a request that the police chiefs have had for many years and kind of languished. I think in the last couple of years, we've made some real progress in that regard as well. So.
And just to add, Vinny, by the way, as a freshman state senator, so is the ranking member for Ways and Means, because he had so much experience on the House side. We just had a Ways and Means hearing that I co-chaired. Vinny and I were meeting with all the police chiefs, meeting with all public officials in public safety. Joe McDonald being one of the people who testified there and was given a lot of accolades for the work on substance abuse prevention. The biggest thing is local aid. And it is a commitment that the governor's made. We as a delegation, we just had our budget priority meeting yesterday for our Plymouth County delegation, saying that that's something we're very supportive of. And I do want to note, as a former assistant district attorney myself, is the pay is so low. Actually, Joe, you were an assistant DA for years too. that it's very difficult. You have a lot of people who are prosecutors who have to work second jobs just to be able to afford to live in this area. So last year, we made the largest increase for DAs that's happened in over 20 years to make sure that we retain great people. So we think across the spectrum, one, more local aid to help directly Chief Wall for all the work you're doing, and the fire chief as well, to make sure that the priorities there, knowing that you're at the front lines of public safety for us. The other then is on another side, the district attorneys to help them. And as Josh pointed out yesterday, very good news for district attorney Tim Cruz, who came up and pointed out not only is he going to have a new office, which doesn't sound like that makes a big difference for public safety, but he's consolidating 4 different offices, bringing all the state troopers to downtown Brockton, which they already know is going to make a huge impact for public safety there. And as Brockton goes for our region, we want our city to certainly be safe.
Awesome. Of course, every business owner, not just those here today, are always concerned with what's happening with the economy and what is being done to help all of us as business owners to drive more business in our own community. So I'm going to shift gears to economic development now. I'm going to start with you, Jim, if you would.
One of the things I want to note, by the way, is how well the Pembroke Chamber, really by getting us in here to make sure we're always thinking, we always learn about other initiatives. Eric Dykeman, by the way, is here from the South Shore Chamber, and one of the items that when our chambers collaborate and talk about how are we going to open up new doors for newcomers, I'll tell you a few things. One, seeing as we all work together on regional infrastructure, we know ways that we want to be able to help and assist businesses to grow. We all worked together a few years ago where a project was really important, really on the Pembroke-Marshfield line to expand Route 139. I have to tell you, if it wasn't for these guys here helping, that project had been on the books for 20 years, wasn't moving, and I went to each of our folks here and said, can you help me out? Just a $6 million appropriation there for 139. How many of you drive into Marshfield at 139? Ever? Just by seeing, and that's your neighbor, by the way, and reciprocally, anytime Josh is asking, we're doing the same. Just that one little project there has already opened up with 5 new businesses come because the $6 million you got there where Settles last was empty, across the street was a repair place was empty. That has now opened up a lot of commerce. And Eric, I want to thank you because Peter Foreman really at the outset was one of the people pushing that. For the whole South Shore, for Pembroke specifically, the chamber, and your chamber is represented doing so, goes to Washington every spring. And every year they have one of us come down with them, or a couple of us, who have all gone before with the chamber. This year I went down with the South Shore Chamber to speak about flood insurance. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it doesn't, people don't always see that having a business direct impact, but it certainly does for coastal areas or any businesses along the water. Because when the feds changed the way they were doing flood insurance, we had businesses being given bills for $68,000 for 1 year of insurance. It was going to put a lot of people out of business. From the banking side, think of what that would do. So we just were down there just this week. We're down advocating on flood insurance for small community banks about how overly zealous things. The pendulum definitely swung, and how that's hurting our small community banks that are now having to merge at an alarming rate. Because of the new federal regulations that are being put in effect. And I wanted to, for restaurants, how many, obviously all of us go out to eat, Josh Cutler more than most, but when we're doing, right now for restaurants, we had a meeting just last week where restaurants in our region were saying, hey, listen, for service dogs, it's something I hadn't thought of, after you may have. Yeah, I am, but people will say, if someone comes into your restaurant with a service dog and says, this is my pet, I need this dog for X, you're not allowed, as a restaurant owner, you're not allowed to say, well, can you prove that need? As a result, we have people saying, look, people bringing dogs that are running around biting at people, and bringing dogs that are sitting in their laps eating scraps and such. So they're saying it's a federal issue, but we as a delegation have been talking about how we can be able to help on that level too, and to make sure that if someone comes into your restaurant, that they have some proof. So those are some items with snapshot issues, but for big picture issues, I'll turn it over to my colleagues for some of the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Rick. So how many of you heard of Plymouth 400? Anybody not heard of it yet? Okay, great. So, there you go. You have to come back to Plymouth once in a while. Okay, good. Just kidding. Vinny's been a great advocate for Plymouth 400. But the 2020 commemoration is actually coming up when the Mayflower came from Plymouth, UK to Plymouth, Mass. And over the last 10 years, there has been a group of people in Plymouth working on this. But it's not just a Plymouth commemoration, and it's not just a South Shore commemoration. It's actually a Commonwealth and national and international commemoration that's happening. So much so that the state is actually putting together a state commission for this. There will be 28 members of the state commission, and what does that mean for all of us? That means there's going to be some economic dollars coming into the region to help fundraise for this thing, because they're looking at somewhere between 1.2 billion to 1.4 billion in economic development for the Plymouth County area in 2020. And the travelers will increase from 2.5 million travelers to Plymouth County to over 6 to 7 million travelers to Plymouth County from national and international. So this is going to be a huge economic development for the area. I know the Lieutenant Governor and Secretary Ash have talked about this being a large part of the economic development for the Commonwealth over the next several years, because it's not only Plymouth that's becoming, that's turning 400, it's also you have other communities like Salem and Quincy and Boston in 2030. So this will be an economic driver for all of us over the next 15 years. So if you're not on board yet, or you need more information on it, I would suggest that you do get involved. Remember, the folks from the Mayflower actually settled in Plymouth Colony, which is all the areas that you live in. So if you don't have any historical backing with that, I'm sure you'll find something that you can make something into a historical site and be part of the commemoration and the tourists that are going to be coming to this area.
I want to just thank Matt for all the work he's been doing on Plymouth 400. It is going to be an exciting time for us, and here in our district, we're right, as neighbors to Plymouth, it's going to certainly have an economic benefit to us. I do want to point out that the Pilgrims landed in the 6th Plymouth district before they went to your district, but that's something we'll talk about later. Not bad. Not bad. So, I wanted to mention two specific things before I did. We literally just, as Jim Cantwell mentioned, we did have just Wednesday, a meeting of our Plymouth County Legislative Caucus to talk about some of our mutual priorities. And I think that's important to point out is that we all, as Plymouth County representatives, work very well together to try to support each other. And again, you see in Washington, D.C., this bitter partisanship that sort of divides everybody and freezes any kind of action. You don't really have that here in Massachusetts, and especially in Plymouth County, where we all need to work together. And so I think it's terrific what Matt has been doing about the Plymouth 400th, and we support him 100%. I wanted to mention two things quickly that actually kind of both came out of discussions with folks here in Pembroke that I've been working on. They're very specific bills, but something that will benefit some folks. One is my LLC filing bill, which I've talked about in the past, which for anybody who's filed an LLC, which is a very common way to incorporate a small business, you get whacked with a $500 a year fee from the Commonwealth for that privilege, which is the highest in the nation by a long shot. And it's in addition to all the other fees and taxes that you get. It's really excessive in my view. It far exceeds the actual cost of processing an application and filing and so forth. So I've long viewed that as something that needed to be changed. It was actually brought to me by a member of the Pembroke Chamber as an idea. So I have a bill that, very simple bill, just cuts that fee in half for any business that's 5 or fewer employees. The idea being a lot of the smaller folks will use the LLC as a form of corporation. It's very convenient whether you get a realty trust or doing a small business or a law firm or real estate or whatever your business may be. An LLC offers a lot of attractive options for you. So trying to cut that fee and make it a little bit more reasonable, I think, will encourage more people, frankly, to take advantage of it and actually hopefully lead to some increased revenue and fees without taxing folks so much. So the update is that our bill got a favorable report, which is sort of like the thumbs up from the committee that was in the State Administration Committee just recently. So that's good news. It's always a challenge to get any bill all the way to the end zone. It takes a lot of steps in the process, but this is an important one to get the bill reported out of committee. So that was a positive step, and that was a bill that was actually arose out of discussions right here at the Pembroke Chamber. So I wanted to mention that. The other one, it may not apply to anyone who's in the room, but I'm going to mention it anyway because I think it's important. I'm always amazed how much here in Plymouth County farming is still a part of our life. I go to the Plymouth County Farmer Bureau meetings, and there's a lot of farming in Plymouth County. Think about it. If you include cranberry, aquaculture, all traditional types of farming. And one of the things that our farmers secession and estate planning, when it's time to think about, passing the farm on to the next generation and not, losing that land. Currently, our state laws tax farms at 50-acre dairy farm. You're going to get taxed for estate planning purposes as if that property could be a high-rise development, not as a farm. And so that forces the farmer to either, sell off a portion of the land or not, it prevents them from passing on that farm to the next generation. And we don't want to lose that rural farming aspect that we have here in Plymouth County. I think it's a big part of, it's a nice to be able to drive and see the cranberry bog still that exists. So we have a bill that I've been working on as a member of the Natural Resources and Agricultural Committee to change that as it relates to estate planning, so that if you have a farm, what's called 61A, which is the chapter that governs farmland. For instance, at the local level here in Pembroke, you're not taxed. The assessing department taxes farming as it should, as if it was a farm. But for estate tax purposes, they don't tax it as if it were a farm. They tax it as if it was the highest and best use. So you have these land-rich, cash-poor farmers that can't really handle that. So this bill would change that. We just reported out favorably from our committee, and I think it's a very positive step that will help a lot of farmers here in Plymouth County. One small part of that bill, and I'll turn over to my colleagues, is we created a program that will encourage people who are returning veterans to get into farming by supporting agricultural and actually uses existing funds, land resources and revenues, using existing community economic development funds to create this program to encourage our returning veterans to be able to get into and stay in the farming business. So two things, it may not affect anyone in this room. I don't know if I see any farmers, but there are a lot of farmers, believe it or not, in our county, and we're going to do everything we can to support them.
I think just quickly, we've talked a lot. This delegation is just interesting, and Jim pointed this out, and I think it's worthy to note, is that each one of us here are business owners. He has a law office, his newspaper business, and Matt has a daycare business as well, and I have a gas station. And that perspective in the legislature, I think, is very valuable, because we understand what it's like to have a small business, to make a payroll, to try to be, to try to stimulate the economy. The majority of jobs that we know that are out there aren't the GEs, and listen, we're excited. I'm thrilled the GEs coming to Massachusetts and whatnot. But the reality is that it's the small little mom and pop businesses that keep this economy going. And having that perspective on Beacon Hill is incredibly important, because to be honest with you, some of them don't understand this. They have a perspective of, of government as opposed to small business. We need to encourage in every way, shape, and form where we can. How do we make it easier for businesses to grow and thrive in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? That's where the jobs are created. And so we try to bring that perspective on Beacon Hill. We're not always successful. It's sometimes a challenge. And I'm in the Senate, and I probably have a little bit more challenges there than I did in the House. I respect my colleagues, but they, many of them haven't been in the small business arena and understand that every action they have has a reaction in regards to the business, and people make decisions based on tax policy. Just a quick point, and it wasn't too long ago that we had done that the software tax that we had done, and it was, it sounded like a great idea that we were going to tax them. These companies quickly said, we're out of here. Within 3 months, we turned that tax around because we figured out that it had a negative effect on business, and we didn't want to lose these companies, because many people appreciate Massachusetts for being tech savvy, and we want these companies to grow and thrive here. And so having that perspective is incredibly important. And lastly, just to quickly mention that the governor's come out and Secretary Ash with their economic development plan. They're going to be briefing us individually. I'm meeting with the Secretary on Tuesday to talk about their vision of where they want to take Massachusetts over the next 10 years and some of the things that we can do. So I think you're going to see some stuff happening very soon in a bipartisan manner. Again, the governor's taking the lead on trying to put together a broad plan, and we're going to try to implement it through legislative means over the next year and a half to 2 years, to see how we can continue to jumpstart the economy and look beyond just next year, but look out 5 to 10 years out.
Well, we're running out of time. introductions. I failed to mention Selectman Arthur Boyle and Bill Bolter are here, along with County Administrator Ed Thorne. And I wanted to make sure I mentioned it now so that you can corner them if you have issues with what's going on in town before they get out of here today. The only question we had submitted this morning, I don't know if it's a Josh, all we put him as his first name. Josh wanted to ask Jim Cantwell, why aren't you wearing a tie?
I called in and I said, Josh, how formal is this event today? He said, Jim, you're fine. No one's going to be dressed up. You don't have to wear a tie. And I wanted to say, thanks, Josh. That's good.
Josh was also the one in high school that would tell his friends, I'll be right behind you. Go ahead. I'll be right there. Well, in closing, I'd like each of you to just give a final comment on something that you care to talk about, Jim.
Just a final, thank you very much for doing this every year. And as Vinny had talked about, and all of us always reinforce how closely we work. One of my favorite stories about how different we are in D.C. Vinny truly, and he was being too modest to talk about tech tax, because he got that was an issue he got up and told us how it wasn't being well thought through, how we didn't know enough issues. Pretty much, you carried at least our whole Plymouth County delegation going against that. But to show, Vinny would get up and give a speech, and oftentimes he can get up and say, we Democrats are wrong on this, we're wrong on that, this needs to be changed. It'd be finished, it'd be really impassioned, then he'd walk up, we sat across from one another, he'd walk up and say, hey, how'd that go? That was great! We always agree, but the collegiality and the fact that you would carry the day so many times says a lot for how our Plymouth County delegation works. To reemphasize, when I was passing the whole video, I said each of us here have been small business leaders. Each of us know what it's like to make a payroll every Friday. Back when we're going to have double-digit increases again in health insurance, we all stood together, and the governor then actually brought suit to try against insurance companies to keep those low. Your voice gets heard every time, and I'm so appreciative for the opportunity to come out and speak today and to just discuss these important issues. Thank you.
I know you want to end this quickly, but I'm going to throw a little bomb out here. And that's an issue that actually this entire delegation has been working on, but I want to bring it to your attention. In November, there's going to be a ballot initiative on the ballot. It's the legalization of marijuana, full commercialization, not decriminalization. We've done that. Not medical marijuana. We've done that. This is full commercialization. And I had the privilege of going to Colorado with a group of 8 senators to talk about how this is playing out in Colorado, meeting with people in Colorado, meeting with the director of marijuana policy, the commissioner of public health, commissioner of agriculture, speaker of the House, from the industry. We met with people from seed to sale. This is a very interesting topic, and I challenge you to understand the ballot question, because this isn't just about saying marijuana is legal and it's okay. It's a far broader question than that. A is the ballot question, and what's in the ballot question. People say it's going to be a huge tax revenue boom. I can give you a whole bunch of reasons why that's not going to be the case. After being there, I'm clearly biased, and I'll share with you. I think it's a bad idea, but I really want to encourage you. We had met early on with the Secretary of Public Safety talking about our concerns, and we had a meeting probably 4 or 5 months ago. We've seen some significant progress. The governor, the Attorney General, again, bipartisan, Mayor of Boston, Speaker of the House, have come out strongly and said that they're concerned about this because of what this is going to be played, how it's going to be played out in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 50% of the products that are going to be sold in marijuana are actually edibles, gummies, gummy bears, cookies, candies, sodas, infused teas, salad dressings, you name it. They infuse everything. They're able to extract the oil out of it, which is the THC. That's the THC is the mind-altering chemical agent. And back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, when you were a kid, it was about 3.5% THC. Now the marijuana cigarettes today are 13 to 18% THC. The edibles are 30 to 40% THC. And it doesn't stop there. They have what they call dabs and shatter, which is people actually, it's like peanut brittle, and you would smoke it in a bong to up to 90% THC. If this passes, totally legal. You'll be able to buy it. there are more pot shops in Colorado than there are McDonald's, 7-Elevens, and Starbucks combined in a matter of 2 years. So just understand that this isn't just, you know, if someone's smoking pot in their basement, it doesn't, you know, it's something that, you know, I get it, but this is a project, this is full commercialization, there's a lot of big money behind this. Trust me, every time I speak about this, there's someone ripping me because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I've spent a lot of time on this, and I know what I'm talking about, and I suggest some pause. So I know it's a heavy topic, I know some of you are going to disagree with me, but I've spent a lot of time on this issue, and I at least ask you, look at the facts, because it's not just, you know, legalization or not legalization. It's full commercialization. It's tobacco industry times 10. So, thank you very much.
I have a question pertaining to that. Current polling is suggesting that that's probably going to pass in November. If it does, what preemptive measures is the legislature taking as far as legal issues like driving under the influence, smoking underage? Is there any kind of preparation, you know, in the event that if and or it does pass?
It's a good question, and just to suggest that that's why we went, because there's a question that it may pass, and so we actually put together the Senate, you know, put together a 100-page document on if it passes. These are some of the things that we probably should address: the taxation, drug driving. I don't know, Chief, but what do you do if someone's, you know, driving under the influence of marijuana? How do you address that? And how do you prove it? Like with
you're almost non-winnable in court because you need a drug recognition expert to come in. It's about an 8-hour process, and we don't have one in Pembroke. We call it Bridgewater. This is very well. It's just ill-received, and it's a terrible message to send out. Here we have an opioid crisis with pharmaceuticals that are over-the-counter legal, you know, that people are getting prescribed, killing people, and then we're going to make a recreational drug out there. It's a nightmare, and we're not prepared for it, and it's a moneymaker. And there's nothing else other than that in Colorado, which is dealing with money. That's all it is. So I'm hoping they can really consider all of the ramifications, because we're not ready for it. We're not going to be ready for it, and it's going to affect us drastically. So please, you know, it's just not legalizing pot. And there's so much more to look at.
And just to another point too, which is I think public safety is huge. We don't have a plan. We know with alcohol, we have the breathalyzer. We don't have that. Nobody has that. So we're opening that door. But in reference to public health, which actually there was a gentleman who led this, Jason Lewis. He was in favor of it. He went out there after spending time and understanding the public health aspects of this. He realized that people can grow 12 plants at home. 12 plants. Well, a plant will grow to full maturity in 5 months. It'll yield up to a pound, which, if it's really good stuff, will yield about $5,000 of value. $250 an ounce is what they'll do. And how are you growing this? What kind of pesticides, herbicides are you using? Well, you have no idea. There's 12,500 pesticides that can be used right now. Only 250 of them are safe for human consumption. Somebody's, people are growing them at their home. Do you think that they're trying to figure that out? They want to grow it to get it as quickly as possible. So from a public health standpoint, you got to question that as well. And so there's just a lot of question marks that are in there. But I think drug driving to me is just like, geez, shouldn't we get a hold of that before we open up a commercialization market? And we know that there are going to be more pot shops than all of these other companies combined. They're going to be everywhere. And what are people consuming, let alone the fact that there's all of these edibles that are really concerning as well. I'm sorry, I hate to throw that out there, but it's my opportunity. By next year when we come here, it will have either passed or not. And I believe that it's closer than you think. Matter of fact, the Patriot Ledger did a poll, and in this area, people are greater in opposition than in favor of it. And you got the governor, the attorney general, the speaker of the House, the mayor of Boston, all coming out strongly in opposition. They're out there, they're working to try to make the case before the industry, because I will tell you, millions and millions of dollars are going to come in here and tell me how great this industry is and how wonderful it is and how the tax base is. So I want to at least use this opportunity to tell you what I think before that money gets spent.
are taking all of our time. So, which is pretty typical, right, Matt? I'll just echo what Vinny said about the marijuana issue. I totally agree with everything he said, and we don't have the budgets in the House to go vaulting off to Colorado, so we actually had Colorado come to us, and we had an event last month, and we had a sergeant from Colorado Narcotics Task Force come to the State House, and the three of us sponsored, and Vinny was there as well, and it really drove home all the points that Vinny's talking about. He brought samples. He actually brought right in front of us. There were samples of gummy bears and chocolates and granola bars that had THC in it. And it really drove home to me how serious this is. So I think our efforts right now need to be pushed towards using the bully pulpit to try to convince folks that this isn't the direction we want to take as a Commonwealth. In Massachusetts, we can be proud that Massachusetts leads the nation in so many things. This should not be one of them. Thank you.
I actually applaud the senators for going out to Colorado and really coming back with the facts. It's all about the facts. And we need to be talking about the facts, because Vinny is right. There's going to be millions of dollars coming in from big business that are just going to talk about in general. But you need to understand the facts. The more facts you understand, one big fact, 27% tax out in Colorado. In this bill, it's 10%. All right? And the 27% is being eaten up with everything you've heard about. Public health. There's no oversight. There's no federal DA oversight. There's crime. Crime is on the increase out there. So it's all going to increase. So facts, facts, facts. I did a program at the Senior Center in Plymouth last Friday. We did the opiates and the marijuana bill. And there was more discussion about the marijuana bill, because guess what? There are more grandparents raising grandchildren now than ever. Because why? Because of the opiate crisis. This is a wrong time to introduce marijuana into Massachusetts with the opiate crisis going on.
Well, as always, Matt, Josh, Vinny, Jim, we can't thank you for making yourselves available today, and every March we sincerely appreciate it. And thank you for being our voice as well. Before we break up, I just want to remind you that our next networking after hours is April 12th. It's always the second Tuesday of every month, but April 12th at Tiny and Sons, and this will be a joint after hours networking event with the Plymouth Church. For you Pembroke members, it's a great opportunity to meet a lot of people that you may not know, may not have the chance to meet and network with them. That's 5:30 on Tuesday the 12th at Tiny and Sons, and we certainly hope you'll be there. Thanks again for coming out, and have a happy Easter. I would